CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach to accounting and rise to each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills. CTBK goes above and beyond by lending helping hands in the Buffalo and Niagara community through volunteer work and donations, and is partnered up with Victory Sports for 2020 and 2021 to keep kids in the community active. The professionals at CTBK are determined to help individuals and businesses succeed. Whether a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400, and see what CTBK's one-team approach can do for you.
TGAF, it is back. Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I am Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times and Matthew Fairburn. He also writes for The Athletic. Josh Allen has a 6-year contract, and it's been talked about. It has been exalted, celebrated. Monster deal, especially when it comes to Buffalo sports. It's the biggest sports contract in Buffalo history. And, of course, fans were going crazy, calling off work early, talking about celebrating, turning it into a 3-day weekend because Josh Allen's under contract. Okay.
That's why we didn't record yesterday. We treated it
we're just getting done.
I needed a day to decompress after my long 3-day weekend. Okay, let's dial it back a notch. We're just the three guys to do that. I am happy for Josh Allen and for the Buffalo Bills and for the fans. But hey, guys, this is a contract. This was not a crisis situation. Josh Allen was not going anywhere. His option was going to get picked up. He was going to be re-signed. He wasn't going to thumb his nose at the Bills and test free agency after next season. So I wanted to take a moment to talk about what is or is not important about this contract. Yes, it's done. It's great for Josh Allen. He's happy. He's got his guaranteed money. He's got his years. This contract goes through 2028. Let me also just say this for the record. I guess feel free to put this in the archive and come back and get me. This contract is not going to get to the end. Something's going to happen before we get to 2028. So let's not just go ahead and start checking off those Josh Allen seasons as they go. It's going to get redone. It might get redone within a few years. It might get done towards the end. He might get cut at some point because a lot of things happen. And I know that on your podcast, Matthew, with Joe Biscaglia, you talk about that. There have been a lot of quarterbacks who've happily signed that extension that maybe just last a couple more years. And I'm not saying that's going to happen for Josh Allen, but let's just try to put this into a little bit more perspective of, all right, we got our quarterback. Now let's start planning out those championships.
Yeah, I was talking to Brandon Beane on Friday night after this had gotten wrapped up, and he mentioned he was just going through, some of the details of how it came together. And he mentioned how the cap had gone backwards basically to what it was when Carson Wentz and Jared Goff signed their contracts. And, as I was walking away from that conversation, I thought to myself, Carson Wentz and Jared Goff were the last group of quarterbacks before Patrick Mahomes and the 2017 group he did his extension. Carson Wentz and Jared Goff were the most recent before Patrick Mahomes, very recent to sign their extensions. And they're both already on different teams. And those were big, similarly structured, massive guarantee extensions. So it's a little jarring when you hear that, especially how soon those were. And then, when it's like, this is the richest contract in Buffalo Bills history, topping Marcel Darius. And it's like, oh, geez. And then you see all the tweets from somebody resurfaced the tweet from a couple of years ago when the Sabres signed Jack Eichel to his extension and the celebration that ensued. And, listeners need no reminder of the conversations we've been having about Jack Eichel for the last few months. So celebrating contracts is not really necessarily the way to go. But in this particular case, the hope would be if this guy
Well, real
continues
quick,
to play he did.
I just want to mention, Matthew, because it is, you use the word jarring regarding the other quarterbacks involved. That's an all-time Buffalo sports contract record of Marcel Darius. It took a quarterback 6 years later to break that record. That, to me, goes to show how absurd the Marcel Darius contract extension was. And we wrote about it at the time. I mean, he was still a player in his prime. You could even like squint a little bit and cock your head and say, okay, but still a defensive tackle with problems who had been in trouble a lot already got this extension. And we didn't even know about the language at the time about how if he were suspended again, the Bills couldn't get out of the contract, or everything was still guaranteed, and that whole fiasco. But that was a 6-year, $100 million extension. It takes 6 years and a franchise quarterback and a borderline MVP candidate to break the record in Buffalo sports. That's just amazing to me. That's how bad that Darius contract was.
Yeah, and they've had other extensions too, right? We've had Jack Eichel, different sport, but a mega deal for one of the better players in the league. Tre'Davious White signed, Dion Dawkins signed. I mean, premium position type of players, but man, did they go above and beyond on Marcel Darius for a guy that had already had issues. That was ill-conceived. Josh Allen, this contract, not so ill-conceived. This is very by the book, how you hope to draw it up. 3 years after you draft your quarterback, you get them locked up. They do it before there's too many rumors about the 2023 salary cap, or at least firm figures. The idea is that it's going to go through the roof with the gambling deals and the new TV deals. So when those big cap numbers come in, they might look a little bit more palatable if the cap goes back up. Brandon Beane said this was harder to get done because of the cap dropping. They didn't know how to structure it. They had to go back to a different kind of structure because he had planned to be able to do the deals like Carson Wentz and Jared Goff did, where you set your cap up and you have room to put money into the first couple of seasons and you have the flexibility to do it. But when the cap dropped, they didn't really have that, and nobody was expecting that. So took a little flexibility on both sides, a lot of late nights. Brandon Beane said there was times where he thought this wasn't going to get done before the season. And as cool as they were playing it publicly, he was a little, there was tense moments on both sides about how quickly they could get this done. They're committed to him essentially for 5 years, which sounds like not a lot on, when we talk about a 2028 term, but it's unprecedented in a lot of ways how much guaranteed he's getting in those first 4 or 5 years. And that's why we're so tied to him. So as things stand right now, it's like a mini Patrick Mahomes deal, and nobody in Kansas City is complaining about the Patrick Mahomes contract. It's looking good. If Josh Allen stays on that trajectory and is just a notch below Patrick Mahomes, which is what I would say he is at this point in his career, nobody would complain about that. Nobody will complain about this deal. I'm not the type of person who sits here and says Josh Allen needs to win a championship to justify this contract. Josh Allen needs 3 MVPs to justify this deal. If they're in the mix and he's playing close to the level that he was playing at last year, to me, he's justified the contract because this is just the going rate for a quarterback that did what he did in 2020.
Patrick Mahomes has a piece of the Kansas City Royals. The version of that would be if Josh Allen ended up with a piece of the Buffalo Sabres. That might actually be the type of move that the Pagulas need to salvage the team in some way, in terms of PR or whatever, and $150 million in guarantees. At least that's against injury, right? Is that?
Yeah, $100 million is guaranteed at signing, and $150 million is guaranteed for injury.
Buy a hockey team for that.
Yeah, you could have thrown an ownership stake in to maybe lower the. I don't know that Josh Allen is enough of a hockey guy for the Pagulas to be able to.
But he's such a Buffalo guy, and he loves to play the part of. I think he enjoys being that. maybe he would do
Yeah,
it.
but when
Or for
push comes to
show.
shove, is CAA and Josh Allen going to be like, instead of, 30 million of that guaranteed, what if we give you, X percentage of the Sabres? I think Josh Allen would say, you know what, I'll just take the 30 million. The revenue stream is not looking super healthy in hockey right now, and it's not a great team you got there. Now that he has the money, would he maybe, say, let me throw some of it at that just
No,
to
I
as a
think we're
PR
looking
move?
at his money being invested in almond farming, cantaloupes, and the family business back in Fireball, California. I wanted to ask you guys just what you thought of the reaction. I mentioned it right off the top that it was kind of like a mini Terry Pagula bought the team. We're saved. Here it is. There was no crisis here, though. There was no threat of Josh Allen missing time in training camp, even. If this, and like you mentioned also, Matthew, that Brandon Bean having some sense of relief that the deal got done and losing some sleep because there was a deadline involved. But if they didn't meet that deadline, I just didn't see much of a, this reaction, this sense of relief. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you know what? Maybe it's this. And I'm sorry I had to go on a little philosophical roll here, but I mean, is it just because there hasn't been this guy and it's one more piece of validation that, you know what, the Bills maybe are figuring this out. And last year wasn't a mirage. And we do have oh my gosh, we do have a quarterback we want to keep. Is that all it is?
I mean, I think you saw the same thing a year ago, or was it 2 years ago, when Tre'Davious White got his extension. And even back to Marcel Darius, when the Bills draft a player who at some point in time looks to be one of the best players in the league, and they re-sign him, they don't let him sign somewhere else, a la like a Nate Clements did before. It's a cause for celebration. And when that's a quarterback that the community and the fan base and the franchise is already head over heels in love with, the fact that he re-signed, as silly as it is, I mean, who would turn down the money that was offered and on the table in that extension? But the fact that he re-signed and committed to playing here for at least a number of years is cause for celebration, regardless of the cap figures and, whether he's really going to live up to the deal or not in terms of production. I think just having Josh Allen around, renewing the vows, if you will, was why everybody had such a fun weekend with it.
That's a great point, Jonah. And maybe that's really what it comes down to. Maybe I've talked myself into an explanation for it. It's not so much the Bills paying this guy. And maybe it's
right, because if you were say you were doing this on a Madden franchise or some sort of salary cap fantasy league where it was only about the production and the money, you wouldn't be all that excited to now have the second highest paid quarterback in the league and be committed to the most guaranteed money of any player in the league, because that is going to hurt their position in adding to the roster and re-signing other players and putting together a team in the future. It might not have much of an effect on this season or even next season, but eventually a quarterback with a $51 million cap hit is going to be, if not problematic, something that gets in the way.
Right. Well, that's what I was getting at. It's not about the contract. It's not about 2028. It's not about the money. It's the idea that the Bills have a guy who's really good and he wants to be here. How rare is that? Over the course of the franchise's existence, all the players who didn't want to be here. Jim Kelly didn't want to be here. Tom Cousineau, first overall draft pick, which, it's laughable now, but he was the first overall pick, didn't show up. He signed in the CFL. Guys all up and down.
Willis McGahee, Marshawn Lynch, players like that.
Right. All those guys who didn't. Joe Cribbs left for the USFL. He was a star here. Who's the player who didn't report from the Dree Archer? I'm just not showing up. Player like Sabres type stuff too. All these different
Vontae
Sabres
Davis
traded here. Well, I'm sorry, Matthew?
Vontae Davis and
Anquan
Anquan
Boldin.
Boldin.
Vontae Davis quitting, just like I don't want to be here.
Anquan Boldin pulled a no-show one day at work.
Anquan Boldin, that's anher great one. He showed up for a week and was like, "Get me out of here."
There's even Bills beat writers that show up and 6 weeks later they leave for other jobs.
That's happened. That has happened.
And I think people are still probably getting over the loss of Mike Rodak as their beat reporter. And so to lose their quarterback on top of that would have been
Right.
a very big deal. I think
They have
there's
re-signed Mike Rodak for $258 million. I don't know, maybe not.
So, all
I
right.
don't
So I
know.
just want to make this quick comparison, and it's probably lost on you guys a little bit, but if there's the older viewer / listener of this podcast, or if you happen to come from Northeast Ohio, people, you can't explain how Bernie Kosar was such a big thing to the Cleveland Browns, because you take a look at it. Yeah, he was very good quarterback. He was a perennial Pro Bowler and was deadly accurate. He was funny because he waddled around, and, he had zero athletic ability, and he was all guts and, that whole thing. But he's a legend because he wanted to be there. And I think that now they think that is this deal didn't go to the end. You didn't have to overpay for Josh Allen. Whatever. What I'm saying is this wasn't a situation where you had to trade for Eric Stahl, who didn't want to be here. You have to, they drafted this guy. It worked. He likes it. He likes us. In fact, he loves us. We love him. And this is the validation that the pick worked from a football standpoint. And this guy likes Western New York. He's not rejecting us because of our small market, because we don't have nice hotels, because we are an outpost, whatever, all the different things that have gotten Bills fans pissed off from what other players have said about their town. This guy is in for all of it. And so that, I don't think I necessarily felt that part of it when we started this podcast, but I've talked myself into that actually being the main cause of celebration, not the fact that that it's the biggest contract in Western New York sports history.
And also that re-signing a player to the biggest contract in Western New York history and one of the biggest in the NFL right now was not a contentious thing, as it probably, if not maybe, would have been under Ralph Wilson's ownership or similar philosophies of ownership.
or even how it was with Dallas and Dak Prescott. Because that was the point I was going to bring up, Jonah, is that from an ownership perspective, you're right. It was a stress-free thing, right? It gets almost old the way that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, the first thing they do is thank the Pagulas, when these things happen. But you do have to remember the previous ownership and some other ownerships around the league where it's like, well, I need to pay him how much right now? Well, I can't do that. So we're going to have to wait. And, there are, places where that type of thing comes into account. I also think from a general manager and organization standpoint, the actual football operation, the fact that they didn't screw it up, right? Like Brandon Beane said, he felt the weight of the organization, which I thought was a human moment, because I was asking him, like, you've had all these firsts, right? You got to find the quarterback. You got to do all these things as a general manager. I'm like, the reason it was tense for him, the reason he felt relief wasn't because he didn't think it would get done eventually. It's just that it's done. It's a lot of work to put together a contract like this. And it's very public. It's not like, oh, they screwed up and let Matt Milano out the door. Or John Brown was pissed off this spring because they didn't give him enough of a heads up that he got cut. Nobody cared. Like, nobody cared that they offended John Brown. Sorry, John Brown, but nobody cared. If this got weird with Josh Allen, the way it kind of did with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, and they dragged it out and hemmed and hawed and said, oh, is this guy a franchise quarterback? Is he not? Because look, the fact that they signed him doesn't make him one. I know it signals that they believe he's one. What makes him one is the way he played last year. If he continues to play that way, the contract never does it. Ask Goff and Wentz, because they're playing for new teams.
Ask Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, ask Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ask Tyrod Taylor. Those guys got extended. Those contracts said something about them. This one does say that the Bills absolutely unequivocally believe that Josh Allen is a franchise quarterback now and for many years to come. But that doesn't make it so. But the fact that they were able to put this together in a drama-free way, and it just got done.
They didn't have to cut anybody. There was no sort of thing where you had to put the team on the operating table and say, okay, here comes the big contract extension, but everybody, they have to telegraph, well, then so-and-so starting linebacker has to get cut. The such and such wide receiver has to have his deal reworked. One of the offensive linemen has to come to the table in a very obvious way and have to restructure his contract. The Bills aren't even at that spot yet, so they can make a big deal
They'll
like
get
Yes.
there.
and just
They'll
like
probably get there.
they
That's
will.
coming.
They'll have to, and this contract will put them there. That will put
But-
them in that situation.
But it,
Um,
it still was a situation where they got it done. I think there were layers to the celebration for Bills fans because on one hand, they love this guy. They love him like he's their neighbor in North Tonawanda. Like, and he is one of them. And like you said, he reciprocates a lot of that and very much has endeared himself to these people. But he's also, I think, in signing this, you see that part, and then you see the relief of having a head coach and a general manager who get it and understand to lock this guy up. They haven't screwed the cap up to the point where they needed to do something dramatic to make this happen. And there's just a sense of competency all around with a deal like this, where it's like, wow, they went out and not only did they find a quarterback, they developed him, they surrounded him with talent, and they kept the cap healthy enough to extend him in a timely manner and allow themselves some flexibility down the line if either this doesn't work out or they need to rework things to fit more people under the cap to surround them with more talent. So I think both of those things, made it. And to your point, if Josh Allen had any hesitation about where he wanted to be, maybe this doesn't get done quite so quickly. But as we know, that's not really how it works in the NFL. As Jonah mentioned, somebody's offering you $258 million. I mean, you'll play in Saskatchewan. I don't know. You'll play wherever.
Play scout team safety like the
Yeah, I mean, the money's the money, and that's how you get it. You don't really hit free agency as a quarterback. They weren't going to sit here and say, "Oh, Josh, you don't want to be here." Well, okay, we'll just let you run out. They already picked up the fifth-year option. They would have a couple of franchise tags on top of that. You just don't have that type of leverage. I mean, you could even see it with Aaron Rodgers this year. When you're locked in the NFL. And so he wants to be here because that's the easy thing to say, right? I wanted to be here. I wanted to get this done. It's like, of course you wanted to get it done. You wanted the $100 million, but there is a sense that he belongs and that he has a story kind of like Buffalo's. All that stuff you were talking about, Tim, the things that get said about Buffalo, the things people say about it being an outpost and this and that. People say all sorts of stuff about Josh Allen and have for years, and he feels sort of a kindred spirit with these people here. And I think it's all of that ropes into feeling that celebration, but I don't know. Nobody else got the real good PR move for Josh Allen would have been to, buy everybody at at Bar Bill, a blue light, probably would have cost him what, $500. And, he
might be running into a tense situation as my sources indicate. I may have tipped my hand a couple of weeks ago regarding a certain poll that Josh Allen may have taken some money from a national buffalo wing chain. I don't know. Let's
Elmo?
who he's going to be pushing in terms of his favorite wing place coming up.
I do miss Buffalo Wild Wings. There used to be one right near the stadium, and we've been there multiple times. We've
endorsement deal with Buffalo Wild Wings. I think that will not be good for his image.
At risk of alienating, I think I may have
although it might
ruined
help
our
him
podcast
actually,
image
actually,
by admitting that we've been there.
Well, if his involvement would help the Sabres, as we threw out there earlier in the podcast, then he could get through the whole local wing industry and make Buffalo Wild Wings popular in Western New York.
I think people would just say, "Hey, Josh, get your money."
Right.
Buffalo Wild Wings isn't a bad place to go eat food and hang out and drink beers. It's just
I think it's
They
terrific.
don't do wings all that well, and it's kind of ridiculous if you're really going out for wings in Buffalo to go there and get wings.
Yeah, it's more of a place to hang.
And
Yeah,
that
you look at the
I'm not
jerseys on
sure
the
what the
wall.
commercials are going to be. It'll probably be something more along the lines of maybe you know how Buffalo Wild Wings
It's going
does
to be
this
one of
time
those
every
stupid
year.
commercials where they use a photographer to send the game into overtime so you can stay at Buffalo Wild Wings longer.
Yeah, you got your NCAA tournament versions where it's a place they want you to go there and do your fantasy football draft. They want you to come there and watch the tournament, So if you eat, whatever, you come here, you eat, you drink, you're going to get drunk enough that you eventually eat, all the different ways that you consume Buffalo Wild Wings. You're probably not going there for the food. You're going there to watch the pay-per-view of the MMA match. You'll have enough beers, decide that you want to throw down 5 or 10 wings. Whatever. I guess I can't hold it
Well, it also kind of,
against anybody.
I feel like it speaks to, I mean, this is Jonah's brand, right? This is what we talked about a few weeks ago, is like, if you want to have ranch with your wings, if you prefer boneless, like if you
I'd go
like
for it.
Buffalo Wild Wings, and roll Tide, man, like get after it. I don't know. I think it's a fine
I mean, I
place to
guess
hang out.
that's true. Because I remember when I was doing those like community stores, I can't remember who the player was, but he came from Dallas and he was at the Anchor Bar, and it was the first time he ever had the wings. Not that they're the best wings anyways, but it was a Lorenzo Alexander wing event. And I was a lineman that came from Dallas, and he was like, "Oh, but nothing beats Buffalo Wild Wings." And I was like, "You'll keep that off the record. Like, you don't really want to be quoted saying that in this market. Like, you'll never live that down." So I
I've
don't know.
said
That's
it on
just what
this-
I think. I think it's Josh Allen. Maybe not a bad move at all. It might be a great move for his advertising portfolio and things like that. But I feel like it'll be a bit of a joke in Buffalo if Josh Allen's endorsing Buffalo Wild Wings.
He can pull it off now. If he got here as a rookie and was like, man, I love all this stuff. And because he does, I think Josh Allen's a pretty genuine guy. And, I do think he likes it here. I don't think he's like playing a part, but he knows what buttons to press, right? Like he's going to drink a blue light when he's on camera. He's going to have his Sabres jersey or his Braves thing and give the thumbs up when he's walking into the stadium. He's smart. He's aware.
He is. He wore a Blue Jays hat when he threw out the pitch at the Yankees game, and I think he's a Yankees fan.
And I think he likes the I think he likes these, but he likes all the Buffalo camaraderie. But I also think he knows what he's doing. And if he had come in and was like, man, yeah, wings, Buffalo Wild Wings, I'm gonna jump on with them, people would have been like, dude, this guy just doesn't get it. He doesn't know what he's doing. But he does get it. He is pretty self-aware. He does know he's a good football player, and he's also he's what you want in a guy that you're handing all this money, because he's smart about how he handles himself. He doesn't say much in press conferences. He gets the fans going sometimes with little things like, hey, only one New York team, right? Like he knows what he's doing. And yeah, so now to do Buffalo Wild Wings, I think he can pull it off, and he'll probably still, when he wants to eat, he'll probably still go to Barbill. Like he'll find a way to make it up to them.
What would be the bridge too far in terms of an endorsement as far as Bills fans are concerned?
I feel like if he got like caught at a Bon Jovi concert, he'd be in trouble. I think that would.
I don't think voting for Trump would do it.
Except he also could maybe bridge that Bon Jovi gap, because there's a lot of people that I think were Bon Jovi fans in this market, and then they changed their mind over, fears about the football team. And now that that's over, I always thought there was a big reconciliation moment coming with John Bon Jovi, and maybe someone like Josh Allen can bridge that gap. I do think when you were talking before, I was thinking that, everything's great with the Bills and Josh Allen and Buffalo Wild Wings and everything right now. But if things were to slip, if Josh Allen's play wasn't quite all pro level, and we get into the later years in this contract and people are a little less enamored with him and his cap figure, you'll look back at the Buffalo Wild Wings commercial and say that was the moment in time when everything changed.
I'm trying. I don't know if you guys can tell what I'm doing here. I'm trying to play tug of war with my dog. She's been bothering me for the. At least I better be doing that, or This is
Tim's gonna get yanked off screen.
this might
here
be
in a
my Jeffrey
second.
Tubin moment.
I
Yeah.
know it,
No, she keeps dropping this rag in my lap and for tug of war, and now she's going to start dragging me away from the camera here. What else do we want to talk about? Do we want to wrap this up before I tear a rotator cuff, or give people enough?
I want to make
give
a
people
joke that
enough
I
video
don't think
ammunition for gifs that would be quite unflattering.
I want to make a joke that I just don't think is appropriate. Maybe if we had an uncensored podcast. I just when you're on
We
these
do have an
podcasts, you just
uncensored
don't want to say,
podcast.
yeah, you just don't want to say the wrong thing though when it could go out into the public. And even the joke might not even be that funny. So
All right, well, then let's not say
But it's taken away my train of thought on any other conversation topic.
Okay. Well, I wanted to get on record after a long weekend with the Josh Allen contract. TGAF will have another episode later in the week. We'll talk about the big Bills Lions tilt.
Yes,
Or we
sir.
won't. Maybe we won't even mention it at all. That's the thing about preseason this year with the Bills being good is we're not used to preseason games that don't really have storylines. There aren't as many position battles. People don't care about these deep backups nearly as much, dark horses, all that stuff. It's
Yeah, we're not going to be there for that reason.
yeah.
Because when asked to justify our presence, the team is basically set in stone in a lot of ways.
Especially for a night game on a Friday night.
The
People aren't
53-man
gonna read it.
roster, there are some questions, small little.
Well, let's
things
save
that
it for
need to
later
be
in the week when
answered.
we preview the big game.
But my point is that
Capital
the
B,
rest
capital
of,
G.
the rest of the team, only one starter isn't back from the AFC Championship game, and they probably upgraded with Emmanuel Sanders over John Brown. This is a tough episode for John Brown. He's not having
I have
an
a
easy
take
go.
on John Brown. Just what you mentioned before, how he was miffed that the Bills didn't tell him they were cutting him, when probably every Bills fan and every amateur armchair capologist had him cut like week 14 of last season.
Yeah, like as soon as the cap was going, before the cap even went down. And then once it did, or froze, whatever, it was like, yeah, this guy's in trouble. Andy didn't stay healthy, but yeah, that's what the preseason isn't. There's not a lot of newness to this team. They brought a lot back. You want to see the rookies do their thing, I guess, but the rookies are at unflattering positions that people don't always pay close attention to on the lines. So not a lot of sizzle to this preseason game, but it's nice to have it back. It's a good tradition, the August Bills Lions game in Detroit.
And the newness is less. I mean, for you guys, if you're going, it's this week, but that third preseason game when it's actually a home game and fans are in the stands, I mean, that's really the newness that a season now is going to have. It's almost like the album came out last year, and now this is the live tour for the Bills and their fans, even though they had some fans at the end of the year. But now everybody, I don't hope, I'm not saying I root for the Bills to do well, but almost for the fans' sake, you want that season that happened last year to happen with the crowd and the fans able to interact. If it's not this year, at least some point in time.
I'm going to see if I can get Daisy to say hello here.
Jonah's now on record rooting for
Yeah,
the Bills, rooting for him.
Somebody asked me at my basketball game the other day, or asked somebody else, and then I chimed in. They were like, do the Bills have to go to the Super Bowl for this to be justify the year? And the guy's like, they have to win the Super Bowl. Like, this has to happen now. Like, this is the year. And I'm thinking, I don't know if that's really the field Super Bowl or bust, winning the Super Bowl, which the Bills have never done. But that does seem like a lot of people are of the mind that it's now or never, and it has to happen.
Yeah, I don't think that way, because it's easy to do. So you can put pressure on them and say, look, they screwed it up. They didn't win the Super Bowl. But winning the Super Bowl is really hard. A lot of weird things have to fall into place for you to do it, which is why I say Josh Allen, maybe he doesn't win one. I don't know. Who knows? There's a lot that will have to go their way. And a lot of it did go their way last year, which is probably why people feel it has to happen as soon as possible. But if he has them in the mix, playing playoff games, occasionally making a run, it's about all you can ask. Daisy agrees. She knows.
Does he need to be an all-pro, legitimate top 5 quarterback in order to justify having
Yeah.
contract that at least
Top
for the
5 to
first few
10.
years. Yeah.
Top 5 to 10, because eventually he'll get pushed down. But if he's in the top 5 to 10, if he's at least good enough that you're not saying this guy's a problem. I mean, heck, if he's as good as like Matt Stafford, even, I feel like that's probably the floor, right? Your Matt Stafford, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is probably worse than Matt Stafford.
Ryan
but he won.
Tannehill, the good Ryan Tannehill, not the bad one that used to play in Miami.
But you won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, Matt Ryan, right? There's probably people that would be like, man, Matt Ryan, all the money they've paid that guy. But he put up numbers. He had him in the mix a fair amount. You just got to be good enough to carry.
Phillip Rivers.
Oh, that Phillip Rivers.
What if you
is
have a Phillip
phenomenal.
Rivers run with Josh
Bills
Allen?
would have paid. Bills fans would have paid $258 million in public taxpayer money for Phillip Rivers to be the quarterback.
Phillip Rivers probably belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Right, but he never getting to the Super Bowl. Yeah, I don't think anybody ever said Phillip Rivers never justified a big contract that he got because he never led the Chargers to the Super Bowl.
It's kind of my point. Like, was Matthew Stafford a massive bust because the Lions stunk? Like, no. Matthew Stafford's probably one of the richest quarterbacks in NFL history, if not the richest, with all the contracts.
He's a disappointment. I would say Lions fans would consider.
Some people would probably say he's a disappointment.
They would also say Calvin Johnson's career was a disappointment too.
Right. But the guy's put up some phenomenal numbers. He's had that team mildly competitive. But that's like, the floor. The Matt Ryan, Joe Flacco, Matthew Stafford. Phillip Rivers is a cut above. I mean, guy's a Hall of Famer. Or if not, it's going to be an interesting conversation when the time comes. But, yeah, so that's why I don't like to speak in absolutes of what Josh Allen needs to do to justify this, so that the Bills absolutely have to win the Super Bowl this year. Is the next 2 to 3 years their best window to do it? Yes. If when that ends, they haven't done it, does that mean they'll never do it? No. I mean, you could hit on some great draft picks and, a lot of things can happen. Josh's career might go a little up and down. He might have a year like last year, take a step back, and then a couple of years from now be back there. Look at a lot of quarterbacks. Look at Ben Roethlisberger's career, and he's had some great years and some not so great years. So that's the phase of NFL fandom that Bills fans need to get used to, is that they have this guy who hopefully in a couple of years, it's not a Carson Wentz, Jared Goff conversation, but otherwise it's just a matter of, the right year, staying healthy, and maybe it happens. I know people are excited for this year though, and why not? They're right up there with the Chiefs in the AFC.
Daisy Graham is too excited, and I'm going to need to cut this short, or else I'm going to get mauled right here on camera. She's got things she needs to do.
That would probably be
not
good
afraid
viral
to interrupt
content.
further. She's kind of watching my back here. So
let's viewed episode on YouTube if Daisy mauled you on camera. I think CTBK.
But also not good audio.
With
I was thinking you need the dog to start barking and growling and mauling you for the sound effects, or at least just edit that in later.
All right. She hears me. She hears when there's a lull. She's a smart dog. When there's a lull in the conversation, when there's a little, she starts trotting over towards me. She knows we're wrapping up. All right. For Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times, for Matthew Fairburn of The Athletic, I am Tim Graham. This has been another episode of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. We'll be back later this week with another episode, TGAF. The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.
Bye.